Hey, so if you were asked me to use the same technique for the first finger of the fretting hand as for the others, and seeing as I have a nice new webcam and you can see things in detail now, I thought I'd make a quick video about it. So the first answer is obviously yes, you mostly use your first finger in the same way as all the other ones, right? There's not much different about pressing down on a fret. But there's some ways in which it's subtly different from the other fingers, and there's another way in which it's the same as the other fingers that people tend to overlook. So in terms of it being different, it is the strongest, most flexible finger. So that means if you're going to do a bend, you can often do it on the first finger, right? And a lot of that first finger bend technique is actually different from how you bend on the ring finger. So that's something to be aware of, right? Just because someone uses that kind of very angled finger position for the first finger, they're not doing something wrong. It's taking advantage of the first finger's position on the hand and the leverage you can get on it. Because it's the strongest finger, we tend to give it all the hard work involved in barring, right? And there's a less obvious thing, which is it's the most flexible finger. And I didn't realize that until I studied with John Wheatcroft. And he's a huge Django Reinhardt fan. And Django could only really use these two fingers, but he could still play these huge stretches. Well, I mean, he didn't have the choice of using his little finger, so he had to put it between his first two fingers. But you will find that you can stretch further between your first two fingers than any other pair of fingers, except maybe, I guess, the first and fourth, if you're going to count that. But you can stretch almost as far. So let's see if I can do like 9 to 14 there. I can do just 3 frets more with my little finger. So the difference is not that large. And that means you can do chords like this one. I'll put the tab up. Oh, there we go. And it blew my mind when I first saw Allan Holdsworth play these voicings, because partly because they're beautiful, and partly because I couldn't believe you could get such a large stretch, but it's actually surprisingly comfortable. And still uncomfortable, but surprisingly comfortable, because the first finger is, again, the strongest and most flexible finger. In terms of kind of lead guitar technique, we also need to use it for muting. So there's a riff by The Mirrorist, and for that one I used really excessive first finger muting. So I'll just play it quickly. Ooh, I keep missing those notes, but what I'm doing here is even notes, single notes I could play with my first finger, I'm actually choosing to play them with my ring finger, and I'm muting with my first finger. And you can see that means my first finger has to be a lot flatter than my other fingers all the time. So if I play... Oh, fuck. That's a little bit nicer. Right, that's a little bit better. It has to stay flatter in order to mute all the strings higher than it, and indeed the one immediately below it. So it's always touching one string lower. So it has a lot of extra work to do in that respect as well. And then finally, the thing that people tend to forget to practice with their first finger is it tends to, because it's doing all the string muting, because it's used for bars, it tends to become this kind of anchor, right, for your hand. And it clamps to the guitar, and the other fingers all do their work, you know, like so you've got that kind of pattern or whatever. But a way in which your first finger is like the others is it needs to be mobile. You need to be able to do slides on it. You need to be able to do hammer-ons with it. You need to be able to do pull-offs with it. And people don't tend to practice those nearly as much as they tend to kind of plant their first finger and let the other fingers fly. This really came home to roost for me when I was learning the tapping solo from Oh God by Cloudkicker. And it's got this lick. And my God, like that little... Getting that volume right, because you have to hammer both notes. getting the volume right, getting the first finger to hammer the high E string and mute the B string at the same time. It was really difficult. So I suggest that you come up with some fun licks that involve actually using your first finger actively, right? Don't let it kind of just be an anchor that holds the rest of your hand back. Let it fly with the other fingers as well. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this detailed little video on what the first finger does. Thank you.